Michelle Levy's recommendations are aimed at increasing the affordability and availability of advice to consumers, but there are still questions about the quality of advice they'll get. Where will professional financial advisors fit in a world where personal advice is no longer their sole purview?
Michelle, how do you see relevant providers competing in an industry where institutions will be able to provide advice at a lower price point?
I think there's a very important role for financial advisors as professionals who are specialists. They will be the only people who can charge a fee for their advice. And I think that again emphasises the skill that they are able to bring uniquely to the role. These are people who should be able to exercise discretion and judgment. And again, they are the people that will have fiduciary obligations. It'll look a lot like a client and solicitor relationship. The advice that people will get from their financial institutions will be, in the main, simple advice. I haven't used those words, but if you think about how it could work, because the financial institution will be responsible for that advice, they need to be confident about what advice is being given. And so they will need to use scripts, they will need to use digital, advice tools to assist their staff. They won't be able to let them sort of have a discretion in the same way that professional advisors will be able to have.
There seems to be a misalignment between how much a consumer would like to pay for advice and how much advice actually costs. How do you see it differing into the future based on your recommendations?
So that's really hard, because how much would a consumer like to pay is probably zero. So that there is no amount of cost cutting that can happen which would bring advice down to sort of zero. And I think there's a role for financial advisors themselves and their professional organisations, associations, in really promoting their services and the value of what they can provide. So I do think that the recommendations have the potential to reduce cost to financial advisors of providing advice. They might pass some of that on. I'm not expecting them to pass all of that on, because, as I understand it, financial advisors are struggling to have sustainable businesses. And so I think it's very much, again, it's about them demonstrating the value that they can give to their clients. For other people, we're really talking about advice that is being given by product issuers, superannuation funds, life companies, general insurers and banks. The advice costs, of course, are embedded in their product fees. And so people will not be paying an express fee for that. And I think that is where most Australians will get most of their advice.
Michelle, you've commented in the past about institutions selling products under the veneer of general advice.
Yes.
How do you see that changing?
So if my first recommendation, that the definition of personal advice be expanded, is accepted by the government, it will be extremely difficult for an institution to have a personal conversation with their customer or their member under the framework of general advice. That's a deliberate thing that I've done, because I think it's extremely important that people get advice that takes into account their personal circumstances. Mm-hmm. That is personal advice, and that is what I want to encourage. I think in many cases now people are already giving personal advice. They think they're giving general advice. This will make it plainer and make it much harder to bring yourself within that framework. That in turn will improve the quality of advice that people get.